Hello, everyone. Welcome to Sanity podcast, where we share science-backed insight for better brain health. We've long accepted that memory loss and mental slowdown are some inevitable parts of getting older. But there are a growing body of evidence that suggests that our lifestyle and even what is living in our gut plays far more important role in determining what our cognitive fate will be, even far more than what we can think about. And so today I'm happy and I'm honored to be joined by Professor Esther Aarts, a cognitive neuroscientist and a professor of nutritional neuroscience at Radboud University in the Netherlands. She's the principal investigator at the Donder Institute for Brain, Cognition and Behavior, and she leads the Food and Cognition Research Group working on the Dutch multi-domain intervention trial. And her research centers on studying the dietary patterns, inflammation, neurochemical signaling, how they interact to affect memory, attention, motivation, especially in the aging population. And her work has contributed a lot to helping to understand why some people are able to thrive on lifestyle intervention while others struggle to maintain them. And this has helped in habit formation and cognitive aging. So thank you so much, Professor Aarts, for joining me on the chat to discuss this very important topic.
Thanks, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. So I'll start with this very hook. It may be a bit personal. So what picture comes to you? What comes to mind when you think about healthy aging and the brain?
Yeah, that's, I guess, a personal picture. That's my healthy, energetic parents who are engaging with my kids.
Wow, great. So I'll go right into the questions. And one of the things that I want us to start with is the bidirectional brain. When it comes to how the brain gets to affect what we eat, and what we eat also having a direct effect on our brain. For someone who has never thought about some of this two-way interaction, can you help us expand the picture of this feedback loop and what it looks like inside the body and why it matters as we get older?
Yeah. So I think everybody can imagine that our brain determines our eating behavior. So in terms of hunger and satiety, but also in terms of reward and control processes. But then the foods that we choose also affect our brain. So they contain the energy and building blocks for the brain, but they're also important for our vascular health. Think about blood pressure and cholesterol, but also for our immune system and the gut microbiome. And these systems in the body also interact with the brain, which is perhaps not so well known. And interestingly, in aging, it's this vascular and immune health that really start to become compromised. But even the gut microbiome changes in aging. And there are opportunities for nutrition to affect these processes also beneficially.
Thank you. And thanks to the neuroscientists, at least we're able to get those benefits from our food rather than going or running to drugs. So my next question has to go with gut microbiome. You had a paper in 2021 that, and that's in the gut microbes that mapped some specific associations between what our gut microbiota and our brain network, those connectivity, and I think using fMRI. Looking holistically into this research, in the context of aging now, what are some of the things that we can leverage to predict cognitive vulnerability even as we grow old before any symptom can show up?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And it's not very easy to answer this because these studies have really not been performed yet. So this study, we looked at multivariate associations, so how different gut microbial species, or actually one level higher, microbial genera, link to different resting state networks in the brain. And such studies are rare, actually, to begin with, and they're not yet performed in aging. But what we do know is that both on the microbiome side, so on the gut microbiome side, and on the brain side, these networks, they change during aging. For instance, we see reduced microbial diversity. We see, so that's on the gut side. On the brain side, we see less within network connectivity. And both of these changes have been linked to worse cognitive performance. And it will be now very interesting to see how these gut-brain associations are perhaps causing this worsening of cognitive performance or cognitive decline, and to better be able to predict cognitive vulnerability. But this is not just done. So it's a really nice question because it shows where we can go in the future.
Thank you. So I wanted to also go towards the probiotics. I read a paper that you were involved in, I think one of the research that you were involved in that has to do with some randomized trials testing that checked whether probiotics could buffer the negative effect of stress on cognition. And I think one of the things that I picked from the paper is that changes in gut microbe composition were somewhat related to that buffering effect. So I wanted to just walk us through the biological story that can kind of expose this therapeutic target for brain health in older adults. And I also would like to ask if this neurocognitive effect that we could see from probiotics is only beneficial at the presence of stress, or even without stress, we could still have those benefits, and what could that be?
Yeah, that's it's also nice to take this study, which is also again in younger adults, to the older adults, and there are some links there. So the idea of this probiotic, it was designed in vitro. It was designed to protect the gut epithelial barrier, so the gut lining. And this is important because if the gut epithelial barrier is a bit leaky, as they say, you have all kind of things crossing that should not be crossing, and the immune system is heavily responding to that. So you get inflammation in the gut, and that can also go to the systemic circulation, and via the systemic circulation, this can reach the brain and then have an effect on our brain functioning. And what is interesting in this study, we did a study in students, young, healthy students, and they were having no depression or nothing, no symptoms of anything. And actually, on our primary measures, all kind of MRI measures and all kind of questionnaires, we didn't see a thing of the probiotic. So at first instance, it was a bit of a disappointing trial. But then we also had a secondary objective, and we put them on the stress. And that was the reason for this, was that if you put people on the stress, there was a short stressor with having their hands in ice cold water and having a grumpy researcher looking at their facial expression, and it's really stressful. The cortisol was rising. What we know from this is that this stress, this acute stress, is opening the gut lining a bit, so it makes it a bit leaky. And the probiotic that we use was supposed to protect against this. And that's indeed where we find effects. So we know that this acute stressor is opening the gut barrier and that you get more inflammation markers in the blood. We also know that this kind of stressor affects our working memory. So we get worse. And we now found here a link. So we found that the people who took the probiotics were protected against this stress-induced detrimental effect on working memory, while the people who took placebo, they were not affected. They were still having a negative effect of the stressor on their working memory. So it seemed that by protecting the epithelial barrier to make it less leaky, you can also protect against stress. So, but now what is the link with aging? And in aging, there's kind of constant stress, there's more chronic stress on the body. And in aging is associated with also a disrupted barrier, disrupted gut barrier, gut lining. So in that sense, these kind of probiotics could also work in aging. And that's in fact already shown. So if you look at meta-analysis who combine many probiotics trials, you do see that that probiotics can have a positive effect on cognitive performance in older adults. But now, interestingly, only in those older adults who have some cognitive deficits. So mild cognitive impairment as a stage that could predict dementia, or people with dementia like Alzheimer's disease. So similar as to our study, healthy adults, also healthy older adults, don't see many benefits from probiotics. But if there's something detrimental, like if there is already cognitive deficits because of mild cognitive impairment or dementia, or if we put young adults on a stress, then you start to see the benefits of probiotics. So we cannot enhance a system that's already optimal. That's kind of the message, I think, from the probiotic studies so far.
Wow, thank you so much for shedding a lot of light of that. Was quite explicit, and that shows why you really emphasize on the buffering capacity in case there is any cause or anything that wants to cause some sort of instability in the system. Thank you so much for explaining that, and that was quite clear. So I'm going to this next one. You have worked across some of this different dots, trying to connect this different parts of the mechanisms together, looking through the gut microbiota, looking at it, linking it to the brain network, how it could influence inflammation, and how it could also lead to some downstream effect like the cognition and the likes. And this also relates to the mind and diets that you're working on, trying to connect this link and then create maybe like an associated mechanism. So this is my thought. So if my thought is true, I'm putting this to you now. What do you think will be maybe the biggest mistake that aging individuals, maybe people, someone like me, maybe if I have an aging person, or even as a person as I'm aging, or clinicians, or even researchers might be making today in treating some of these things as separate domains? I don't know if you got my question.
I think they kind of lose the prevention potential. So although I was just saying that there's only an effect of probiotics on cognitive performance once we already see deficits, what we do already know that there's in the brain there's many compensatory changes. So we have this brain reorganization, like you see with these networks in the brain. They reorganize to be better able to perform. So it takes people can still perform, but it takes more brain capacity to perform well in aging. And I think if you look at just at symptoms or and you forget about the gut microbiome, for instance, you also lose prevention potential. So there are changes in the gut microbiome, there are changes in the brain, but if you just focus on symptoms, say, oh, you don't have any symptoms yet, so there's nothing wrong, just go about with your life. I think we miss the potential to prevent people from getting dementia, like Alzheimer's disease. And there's no treatment for dementia yet. We know that there's all of these changes in the gut microbiome, in the immune system, in the brain. And we also know that if you start much later on in the disease process with a nutritional intervention, there's less capacity to still stop this degenerative process. So if we want to be early, then I think it's important to start early to look at these gut-brain links, and there is prevention potential for instance, prebiotic or postbiotic or symbiotic, which is a combination. And many people look at the gut health, and many people look at brain health, but not many people look at the combination. And interestingly, there is a link. We know this a lot from animal studies, but also in humans. And our lab tries to indeed connect the dots and show that these links in humans are also important and have some contribution to a brain health, and in the end, then also to cognitive health. And I think we need to do more research, that's for sure. But I think by connecting the dots, we can have more prevention potential in the end.
Great, thank you so much. So for someone who might be listening now that is aging or getting to like 50s, 60s, or even young adults who may want to learn more on how to, you mentioned something around the prevention and also getting the adjustments. What are some 3 lifestyle that you may want to just give to us as a tip based on some of the findings or insights that you got from your research that's a realistic lifestyle that we could leverage and be able to adopt to support our brain for better outcome?
Yeah, so that's an interesting point, and especially since you mentioned already people from the 50s, because in midlife, you see that there's many factors predicting dementia later in life. So obesity in midlife predicts dementia later in life. Same for high cholesterol, like the bad cholesterol, LDL cholesterol, or high blood pressure. So many of these factors play a role around midlife, and many of these have something to do with our lifestyle indeed. So a lifestyle factor, of course, me as a food and cognition researcher I have to mention diet. And for this, I would mention a more Mediterranean type diet, which is very high in healthy fats, like omega-3 fatty acids or oils, like olive oil, but also high in veggies and fruits, legumes, nuts. So and not so much high in red meat, for instance. So that's really kind of a plant-based diet, but with some fish and perhaps some lean meat. And this is because this is healthy, it has healthy fats, it has healthy plant compounds like minerals and vitamins, but also these kind of polyphenols that protect the brain against oxidative stress. But also many fibers. So, and these fibers can act as a kind of nutrition source for the microbes, the bacteria, and the bacteria make healthy metabolites from this, like short-chain fatty acids, and they protect the intestinal lining, like the probiotic I was just describing. So we can also feed our own bacteria with fibers that we can get from legumes, from nuts, from fruits and vegetables. So the one factor is diet, but it's a long story. But then also, what is also known to affect a lifestyle factor that's known to affect also the gut microbiome and the immune system is, of course, physical activity, also well known to affect the brain. And another factor, for instance, is sleep. And this is also well known to affect the gut microbiome and also the brain in aging. So to say some extra factors, well, they are all connected. So for instance, if you have more physical exercise, you can better sleep, but you also have less stress. So for instance, stress really interacts with these factors. If you have a healthy diet, you also have better sleep. So all of these factors interact, and that's why we are currently looking at multi-domain lifestyle interventions where we try to coach people to adapt their lifestyle on all of these factors together in groups, because the social interaction is also important. And this is something that we do in people from 60 years up. But already at 50s, we know that these factors are predicting dementia. So already at 40s, 50s, you can already start adopting a healthy lifestyle.
Thank you so much, Professor. I really appreciate the fact that you took your time to really break this down for us. These are a lot of takeaway for people. I know this, just to keep this very short, this was an opportunity to get to hear directly from you. I will want you to share with us your final thoughts, and maybe if there's any research in the pipeline that you may want to share about, or something you're working on in nutritional neuroscience as you close up.
Yeah, so for now, with this multi-domain lifestyle intervention I was just talking about, we are now looking at whether this kind of multi-domain lifestyle changes your gut bacteria, changes your immune system, and whether we can link these changes to changes in the brain. So that's very exciting, and that's coming up from our lab from a PhD student, Lianne Remy. So yeah, stay tuned, and we hope to have more results soon.
Great. Thank you so much, Professor. And if you're fine with it, I can try to get the link to your lab and put in the section for the video for people that wants to follow up and get to know more about what's happening in your lab. Yeah.
Definitely.
Thank you
Thanks.
so much, Professor Aarts, for your work, and thank you for making out time to chat with me and in here. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining, and trust you have gotten some insights, some ideas, and how we could get our brain into a better working outcome. And we are happy that we're able to get this much insight from Professor Aarts today, linking those behaviors, those diets, and those contents of our gods together, and how they could improve our overall well-being. Until next time, please take care of your brain and stay sane.